Who is this Son of God, man? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. On Palm Sunday, the throng joyfully acclaimed Jesus Christ as he entered Jerusalem, casting palm fronds before him and singing, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The Lord bless the King of Israel. Jesus Christ had told the people, the Son of Man must be lifted up. His reference, so we are told, was to the mode of his impending crucifixion. Some people on that occasion had asked, who is this Son of Man? Was Jesus a human being merely? Those who on Palm Sunday called him King little realized the actual nature of his kingdom. He was far more than what they imagined, however. Yes, of course he ate, drank, walked, slept, and talked like others. His consciousness, however, was centered in infinity. Yes, again, he laughed like others, but his laughter expressed divine joy, not mere merriment. Again, he wept like them, but never with human grief. The tears he shed were for the sufferings of unenlightened human beings. Never were they shed in self-pity. Jesus Christ was wakeful in God. Most people, by contrast, are asleep spiritually. How strange to reflect that less than a week from that entry in Jerusalem, so joyfully acclaimed, he would be arrested, condemned, and crucified. Such is the bitter sweetness of human existence. Smiles of welcome one day, insults, even persecution the next. How few realize that Christ's suffering would not be for himself, but for people's ignorance, for those who had not yet understood the deeper reality that dwelt also in them. Everyone is born training clouds of glory, as the poet Wordsworth put it. Even the meanest beggar has lived a story, or will eventually have lived it, more magnificent than the greatest epic ever written. In the Bhagavad Gita, the dichotomy between the Son of Man and the inner Son of God is beautifully described. Sri Krishna, representing God in human form, reveals his true nature in infinity. In the 11th chapter of that great scripture, his chief disciple Arjuna exclaims, O infinite light, thy radiance, spreading over the universe, shines into the very darkest abyss. Thy voice overwhelms the roar of cosmic cataclysms. Lo, the myriad stars are thy diadem. Thy scepter radiates powerfully everywhere. O immortal Brahman, Lord of all, again and again, at thy feet of infinity, I lie in prostration before thee. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Good Palm Sunday to everyone. Some years ago, Some years ago, Swami Kriyananda, in this period, had gone to Holland, and he had seen gardens, magnificent, wonderful gardens, full of flowers, all colors imaginable, and even colors that you cannot imagine. Flowers have this power about them, the power to show us that we are closer to divine beatitude. In that occasion, Swami sent for his garden hundreds of flower bulbs of all colors, and he said, put them in the garden so that when it is time we can watch them also here, and I can see them too, and it will remind me of this beautiful moment that I have passed here in Holland. So we didn't think that for us this for us is beauty, for other people is just food. So beautiful porcupines came when we planted the bulbs, and before they could even flower, they started digging and they started eating the bulbs. And those porcupines brought their friends and relatives who were feasting. Many porcupines, and in 3-4 days all the bulbs had been eaten. Swami calls, says, how are the bulbs doing? Very well, Swami. They have all been placed in the right place. Obviously, we called the gardener saying we need help because there's no tulip left. All of them have been eaten. And then we planted tulips that started growing, but not in the quantity that Swami desired, because we always had these little dwarfs that wanted to play with us. At that moment, when the gardener came to Swami's garden, he saw these tulips, saying, you must put them in vases, because porcupines are very greedy and they will never stop eating them. So they continued to dig where the old bulbs were, but fortunately, in the meantime, we had planted them in vases. The gardeners then continues every day to come, and in 2013 he wakes up in the morning and he says, I have to go to the house, Swami's house, to take care of his flower. Swami had not called him. Yeah, please. Louder. So he started planting those flowers outside the house of Swami's garden, exactly where Swami had left his body. In that moment, he came at 7 o'clock in the morning. He was outside there, planting bulbs for Swami, flower Swamis, and at that moment Swami had left his body. And he felt within, at the moment Swami had was leaving his body, something very particular, very strong, because they loved each other. Every year Swami went out to hug this gardener, and in those years he would never hug people, but the gardener he would hug. And at that moment he went there. It was 8:15 in the morning when Swami left his body. The gardener then, after a few days, called me saying what was happening in Swami's house on that day, and I explained it to him, that Swami had left his body. And he said, I have lost my greatest friend. I have lost a person who was for me a reference point. They would see each other once a year, maybe 5 minutes long, maybe 2 minutes. They would greet each other, and there was an exchange of energy so beautiful, so deep, that it transformed the life of this man, this gardener. Now he's 87 years old and he's still there doing flowers, and he's still fighting against the porcupines. He's still taking care of the flowers. Today then we celebrate Palm Sunday, in a very important day, Sunday, because Jesus performed the miracle of resuscitating Lazarus. Some people didn't know that, but in those days all the energy went to. And the throng wanted Jesus. They wanted Jesus, they loved him, they had trust in him, because they knew that what was there, not all the words of the gospel can explain what it meant, what Jesus meant in those days. I believe that many of us in past lives might have been there in Jerusalem in those days, when they saw a man pass by full of light along the roads of Jerusalem, the streets of Jerusalem. Certainly we may have looked at, without understanding what it was, but maybe just that look, receiving the touch of light, may have transformed our soul forever. Jesus then came to us to give us great, great teachings. Parts of the gospel that is dearest to me, maybe also the deepest, is when Jesus asked his apostles, "Who do the people say I am?" Some people say, "I am John." Other people say, "I am Elijah." Others say, "I am one of the prophets." But you, who do you say I am? It's a big, important question, because he wanted to give the possibility to the disciples to go deep, not just stay at the upper surface of the body. And they answered, "You are the Christ, Son of the Highest, Son of God reborn." And Jesus then says to Peter, he says, "Blessed you are, Peter, because flesh or blood have not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven has revealed this to you. From now on I will call you Peter," which means stone, "and on this stone I will found my church," which is not a building, it's an inner church, a church made of important things, elevated things. And then Jesus continues saying, "To you, Simon Peter, I will give the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Everything that lives or dies on earth will be bound or dissolved in heaven." And then he adds, "And the strength, the powers of darkness cannot prevail there." So he gave the possibility not only to the disciples, but everything that is bound is what binds us with God. What binds us with God on earth will also bind us with God in heaven. And what we can dissolve in our karma on earth will be dissolved also in the kingdom of heaven. So at that moment Jesus gave the possibility to each one of us, not only to the disciples, to have those keys. This is a great responsibility, to hold keys, because these are important keys. They open important doors. They open the heart of people. And he gave the possibility to each one of us to become sons of God, no longer sons of men. These teachings, we have them here on the altar, are the great teachings that our masters have brought us, and that encourage us every day to follow them. Sometimes it goes better, sometimes we don't. doesn't matter, don't worry, even a little step is important. One little step, as it says in the Bhagavad, even if one day we cannot perform the teachings well, let's offer to the masters even our trouble. That too will have a great value, will be of great value. On a hill, I'm telling you a story now, some of them may know, there once were 3 trees on a hill, big, nice, impressive. One tree says to the other, one day I would like to be cut, and with my wood I would like there to be made a beautiful desk where they can expose gold and jewels and other precious things can be exhibited. And you, he says to the second tree, what would you like to be? I would like to be a big ship, powerful ship, where kings and queens may cross the seas, and I would be proud to take them to the other side of the ocean. And then they asked the third tree, what would you like to become? And he says, I wouldn't like to be cut. I would like to stay here and become the biggest tree, the most majestic tree in the world, so that when people come here, they can watch my majesty, then they look up, see how tall I am, and they will feel a little closer to God. Years go by, and a group of woodhackers comes. They see the first tree, say, that's a nice tree, I'll cut it. And they take it, and I'll take it to a carpenter. And the carpenter knows what he can do with it. So they cut the tree and take it to the carpenter. The second tree, again they look at it and say, this is a beautiful tree. We can take this to build a ship from. And this is a desire that we can satisfy. So again they cut it and take it to where they can build ships. The third tree sees those saws and starts trembling of fear. They look at each other and say, well, this third tree, what can we do with this tree? Nobody knew what to do with it. Let's cut it in any case, and then we'll see what we can do. So they do cut it, and they put it somewhere in a deposit storehouse. Years go by. The carpenter takes the wood of the first tree and makes a big container for food for animals. One day, then this big box is put somewhere, and near that box, a mother and a father, two parents come in. The mother is pregnant. There's a little child in that, and they will take the box. That contains food for animals. They put the baby in there. And then what happens? Many people come to see the light that is in that. Even kings come to honor this child. And the tree that then became the manger says, maybe I have not become an exhibit, a desk, but what is inside me now is the most luminous thing, not on earth, but in the whole universe. The second tree is not used to make a ship from. They make a little boat. And one day, on this boat, a few fishermen they go fishing, and in the boat there's one man asleep, and then there is a storm and there are high waves. People on the boat, and this is the tree who talks, and they awaken this sleeping man and say, Master, Master,
There is a storm, high waves, maybe we will all drown, we may not survive. The man stands up and says to the sea, be at peace. At that moment, the sea again calms down and the waves stop. And the tree that has become the boat says, I believe that on me there is a king of kings, of all kings on earth, that even the wind and the sea listen to, not only the people. Then the third tree that was in the storehouse. Someone opens the door of this garage, comes in, starts sewing, and make a cross. A man comes in and carries the cross and begins to walk. People spit at him, they laugh at him. People would like to help him, but they don't have the courage to do so, because the military, the soldiers are there. They take this tree, take it up to a hill, plant it there, and this man is crucified on this tree. There are people there crying, wailing, people who feel that something big is happening. And now the tree, first he hasn't understood what has happened, but even now, 2000 years later, there are millions of people who go there, where that tree was. Of course, the wood is no longer there. They look at heaven and they feel uplifted. They feel closer to God. So you see, each one of us, we have our own projects, our own ambitions, our own dreams. But very often, our dreams are not the same as the dreams that God has. For us, they may be slightly different. And if things are not going as we want them to go, as we say they must go, we get angry, because things must go as He wants. And if we give Him the chance to do it as He wants them to go, then there will be a great evolution in our lives, and our dreams will be the best dreams that we can ever have realized. I went to places where Jesus was born, where He went on the boat, and also where this tree was planted. Even though 2000 years have passed, His presence there is still so strong, tangible, that if you read the Gospel and close your eyes and disconnect the mind from everything that is around us and go deep with it, then we can receive information as Simon Peter received information. He received not information, not through the flesh and the blood, but from the kingdom of heaven. And in those moments we can perceive the presence of Christ and of His consciousness that has never died. It might even be, it's more alive now than before, because we are much more ahead of it now. We're in a period when there is more energy, awareness, there's an evolution going on inside people. And so that presence is now more alive than ever. And we can now hold it in our hearts every day more strongly. On a train there was a lady who sat down in front of a man, opposite a man. And he asks this man, "Excuse me, are you a Jew?" "No," says the man. "No, I'm not a Jew." "Okay." After a while, the lady looks at him again and says, "Are you sure you're not a Jew?" "No, I'm not a Jew. Not at all." Okay. After a while, this lady then says, but the more I look at you, the more I'm convinced that you are a Jew. So this man loses his patience, says, okay, you've won, I'm a Jew. Okay, okay. The lady is very satisfied. And again, looks at him and looks at him attentively. But thinking of it, I don't think you are a Jew. So what we imagine, all our theories, are always wrong. If there's not a deep root in God, if the thoughts are not rooted in God, we come from God, we grow in God, and one day we will free ourselves in God. Everything that is in between are just many, many experiences. All these experiences, we can accept them or not. But who accepts life's experiences has a gift, an infinite gift in heaven. And this gift in heaven is available now. We are sons of God, not sons of man. When we attune ourselves to the divine, we become sons of God. When we attune ourselves with everything that goes on in this world, in our quote daily life, then it becomes more difficult to keep this connection with God alive. We need to take, so we allow ourselves to be confused by everything that goes on. I know this world deludes us, it gives us illusion, it uses a lot of tricks, but it's really telling you that you have to be strong to come to me, says God. And He has time, He has all the time to wait. But when we enter in attunement with the teachings, then we know that we can go faster. Every day we must do our best in order to be able to live with God's consciousness. The other day I watched a movie that Gopala sent me, where Swami says that he had met after a trip to Jerusalem, he had met with a priest, Swami, and this priest had a conversation with Swami, and Swami then says, I told you, I spoke to him about the living presence of Christ, and this priest said, it's a nice story. Swami said, no, it's not just a story, it's a true thing. That presence is there, you can feel it. And the priest said, it's just a nice story. So you see, there is so much more. Our masters have come. When we read Autobiography of a Yogi, if we read it with a busy mind, then it's just a nice story. But if we read it with an open mind, with an open heart, then there is so much more than just a nice story. There is a power behind it, a strength that somehow lights a light within us. When Jesus said, Son of God is like a seed, it has to die in order to blossom, in order to make flowers. We don't need to die to have fruits. The ego must die, and the masters come to help us with that. You want to make more fruits, or would you like to wither soon? That's what they say. That's the choice. That's the choice we can make. And I think it's worth thinking about this choice. Maybe it's an uphill road, definitely. A road that will give us many things a lot of work to do. But then we live every day in the presence of our masters, the living presence of Christ. then the difficulties that we have become less, and we can accept them, and then this great power comes and we can accept the difficulties or not. This is the free will that we have, the choice that we have. We can have anything we like, but eventually, once we realize that this is not worth, that is not worth it, that is not worthwhile, eventually only we will have only one thing. We want to be united with God. That is ours by right, has been ours by right from the very beginning. So I wish you a wonderful Palm Sunday. You will see that it will be, your search will be a great success, that your life will become a triumph of light and joy. So happy Palm Sunday.
Signor.